Okay. Thanks guys for joining me. So I'm gonna take a step back and talk about Docker Enterprise Edition. Just a little background on myself. You guys all sound very familiar, and I realized why, because I was at VMware for 7.5 years, and I read all your blogs. So it's interesting, how we were just having the conversation about MTA, and kind of, we're going back to P2V again. We're back at 2005. We're going back to identifying what's on that server. Now we're identifying what's in the VM. How are we getting it into the next, abstraction of or virtualized abstraction, which is a container. And I think what's interesting for me is we are going through many of those same steps all over again with customers, right? I see it day to day, and I think back to when I started at VMware 2006 or 2007. We were having exactly the same conversations about P2V and identifying what are the right applications to virtualize and which ones are not. So I think this is very much in line with those conversations. What's interesting, and I think is different, is that we're having these conversations with application and business teams, not just the infrastructure teams. So it used to be, hey, let's go talk to the sysadmin, right? And he's got purchasing power of 15K. Let's get him to virtualize his first server. It's usually a file and print server. We're not talking to those folks at all. We're not talking to Exchange admins. We're not talking to DBAs. We're not talking to the Linux admins. We're talking to the application teams who are driving business, and they're the ones bringing us in to talk to their IT teams. And so we are having the conversation about what is in this VM, or what is in this physical server. What application is this? How does it connect? Interestingly, they do have some context. I think they know a little bit more than when you start from the other side of the equation with a production team or with an infrastructure team who's got to work their way into the application. And so I think there's an advantage to that, as well as the fact that both teams happen to be at the table. So there's I think advantage for both of them to be at the table, to have the conversation about what are we going to do with this platform. Sure, maybe it's going to save us money on the infrastructure costs or on licensing costs for Windows or for virtualization. But on the application side, what is, if the benefit here is portability because I can take this to the cloud, or higher agility and efficiency for my developers, I mean, that trumps anything any advantage we might get on the infrastructure side. And so I think that's an interesting part of the conversation that we're having at Docker that I haven't seen before in my previous experience with VMware.
So how many of those customers do you think you've taken the opportunity to actually document their application properly?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's too early to tell. I don't know how many are going to take this as an advantage to do that. I will say that many of them are modernizing their apps anyways. They're doing these app transformation strategies at large anyways. And so they've got to do it one way or the other. I feel like that's an orthogonal path that they've got to go down no matter what, right? If they're going to rewrite their apps and modernize them, whether they're going to containerize or not, they've got to figure out what that app is and what it's been doing, and what else is it connecting to, because they've been stringing that spaghetti code together for a while now.
Well, and to your point, if you just take, obviously you don't want to do this, but take containers out of this. Any customer looking to go to some kind of public cloud platform.
That's it. Yeah. They have to figure this out, right? So for many of them, whether cloud was driving it, whether app transformation was driving it, whether DevOps was driving it, or whether it's just we got to clean up as we go, I think those were all driving their desire to figure this out anyways. So just thought I'd throw 2 cents into the last conversation. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to try and, actually, Ed, you brought this up, close the gap in trust for enterprises who want to run Docker, right? Lots of enterprises out there already running Docker, many of them building their applications on Docker. Most of them are still trying to figure out what does that mean in a production environment and how do I close that gap. And so our goal in this kind of last iteration of our messaging around our enterprise solutions was to make sure that enterprises know exactly what capabilities we can bring to the table and where we bring other third-party ecosystem to the table as well, in a joint way that they can rely on us. This is a little bit of the history slide. We all know Docker started with developer community, slowly moved into individual operators who were, saw the value of packaging everything the same and saw the value of taking, a predictable package that they can deploy across their environments. And then very quickly we found enterprises kind of stuck with either developers who created a package and handed it to them, and this is the story, I believe, at MetLife, right? The MetLife guys basically got handed a Docker Compose file, and their developer said, "Here, deploy this in production." And they were like, "What? How are we supposed to do that?" So, moving from a developer community which is fine with breaking changes and great with experimental features to an ops community that wants slightly more stability, stronger consistency around the APIs, but willing to take some piece parts and actually put them together. Going to an enterprise IT architect who wants an end-to-end solution, kind of gave us a nice foray into building out the Docker platform, and of course including the partner ecosystem and giving them ways to now plug into that ecosystem. So that's kind of where we are today. Is we're now, I'd say, at the end of trying to address these folks as much as we've been previously addressing the individual developers and ops folks. And so we've specifically defined packages for those communities. If you recall, like previously, to get started on Docker, you'd either have to go, find our scripts to go install Docker, or you could build it out of the open source. There's a fairly high hurdle there, and people would talk about how much value there was in Docker, but just to get it installed and get it running, there was a hurdle. And so the Docker Community Edition is meant to address exactly the problem for folks who want to get started with Docker but don't know where to start. So the individual developers, the do-it-yourselfers who want to take the components and just try it, just to understand a little bit more about what it means to package up an application as a container image or run a container. We provide it in 2 release cadences. One is a monthly release, which we call Edge. And so the Edge release has experimental features, breaking changes, all kinds of unstable stuff, but it's the cutting edge. And then we have a quarterly release that, say, an ops team that wants to do it yourself, they can rely on. They can deploy it, and those changes are then slowly rolled into a much more stable version. And quarterly releases in the Community Edition are supported with backports and fixes until the next quarterly edition comes out. And so you've got basically 3 months of stability, and then you can just keep moving with us on that cadence. For enterprises, obviously that's not going to work. Enterprises don't move quarter to quarter. They move year to year or 6 months and 9 months cycles. So the Enterprise Edition was really meant to address folks that are going to run at that longer cadence. They need that trust gap identified and bridged for them. So they need to make sure that they can actually get full support around the platform for a full solid year while it's running in production. So we give them quarterly releases and backports and fixes for a full year on the release. And then we give them certification around the infrastructure that it will run on. So we fully support it on specific infrastructure, specific operating systems, as well as the plugins and containers that run on top of the platform itself. So we will tell them explicitly, if you want support for Nginx or you want support for Mongo, get the certified container. We have TSA-NET and all the great support mechanisms behind that to make sure that when you get that certified container, we will fully support you behind it. And Mongo is behind us. So we'll take the call and we'll figure it out between the two of us. So that's the goal of the Enterprise Edition, was to make sure that enterprises know that this is what they can start with.
Container as a service?
Yes.
Is that like, explain what that is, because I know what some people think it is, but let's get a really good definition.
So the simple way to think about container as a service is, if infrastructure as a service was, give me the building blocks that I can use from like an OpenStack or private cloud deployment to build out my VMs, my networks, my storage. Containers as a service is one layer above that, but one layer below platform as a service. So if PaaS is a rigid kind of here's the specific application frameworks you can use, and it's in a very tight end-to-end flow. What we do is we take the best of both worlds, we believe, somewhere in the middle. This is the, my porridge is too hot, my porridge is too cold. We're going to go right in the middle. We're going to give you the the ability to run the container and sets of containers, and we're going to give you the ability to manipulate that while still using whatever application frameworks you want. So you get full independence from the operating system and from the infrastructure, but you're not tied to a specific application framework or a specific methodology, right? And this is what allows us to do things like MTA, because if we were tying you to a 12-factor methodology, there's no way you're going to take a legacy app and somehow stick it into, a CI process meant for 12-factor. And so containers as a service provides you the visibility to that abstraction layer, as opposed to trying to lock you in on one layer up, or not giving you, we believe, not giving you enough at the infrastructure as a service level. So Docker EE consists of one, the integrated stack running on certified infrastructure. So we certify, which infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, operating systems, et cetera, that you run on. We then also certify the plugins, specific plugins around monitoring, logging, third-party ecosystem that can run on top of the platform, and as well specific containers. And the container images, plugins could be network and volume extensions to the platform, and then the containers themselves could be things like Mongo, could be full-on business applications from like SAP, for instance. So these are the types of things that we're working on, and I'll show you a list of all the vendors who are participating in the program right now and have already started to publish their certified containers and plugins.
What's the adoption of each of those, the Community Edition and the Enterprise Edition?
Well, they're new, right? So we announced this in February, March 1st, actually. so it's still fairly new. This is a continuation of, I'd say, a previous set of capabilities we had. So previously, in February of last year, we announced Docker Data Center, which was a feature set on top of the commercially supported Docker engine. So what we've done is we've taken all of those capabilities and now branded that as the Enterprise Edition. So thousands of customers currently that have purchased the Enterprise Edition, previously Docker Data Center, commercially supported Docker Engine. On the CE side, that is a combination of today all of the folks that have adopted, say, Docker for Mac and Docker for Windows, as well as folks who are using, say, Docker for AWS and all the other Docker editions that we've provided, as well as folks that are running the open source. So, millions for sure, billions of pulls. So yeah, pretty big. What we're trying to do is as we consolidate into kind of these two buckets of the Community Edition and the Enterprise Edition, we're trying to give folks a very clear boundary of, what it means to be a contributor to Docker, what it means to be a user of Docker and what you can expect there, and what it means to be a commercial paying customer of Docker and what it means.
I think it's a good thing for you guys to clear up.
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but do you guys have any plans in the future? I know this is still really new, but to support any other CPU architectures outside of x86?
We do. We're going to make some announcements on day 2.
Okay.
So we have, obviously cloud providers and a lot of the Linux operating systems and Windows today, all x86. We're going to talk on day 2 about some additional platforms we'll be supporting. Yeah. I don't want to ruin the thunder for that.
Go day 2 general assembly.
Yeah, now you gotta go to the keynote.
It's okay. We know you're bringing titanium back. We're right there with you.
I don't know if I want that baggage. So just to get into kind of what an edition looks like. So we're using this word edition to really describe and prescribe for ourselves how we provide Docker in a very specific way. And so we provide the notion of an edition on top of a platform to take advantage of that infrastructure or that platform. So in this particular case with, say, Amazon Web Services, we're spinning up, not only the EC2 instances to deploy Docker on top of, but we're also leveraging IAM, we're leveraging ELB, we're leveraging a CloudFormation template to orchestrate the whole deployment. We're letting you deploy inside a VPC or an existing VPC if you have one. EBS volumes, et cetera. So every time we give you an edition, or every time we give a customer an edition or an enterprise an edition, we say explicitly, this is going to leverage parts of that infrastructure. So if you want to use the Azure edition, you're going to use Azure's ELBs, you're going to use its block storage, you're going to use its object store, et cetera. So similarly for the operating systems, we do the same. So on Red Hat, we're using the capabilities of RHEL and Oracle and Windows, et cetera.
Have you guys worked out pricing models for those different platforms of what that's going to cost to deploy Enterprise Edition?
Yeah, we have. So today for x86 platforms in general, we're doing about $150 a month per node pricing. So it's a per node pricing model. We have per month and annual pricing, and then ELAs and such for larger enterprises. Yeah. So two important aspects about the Enterprise Edition itself. One is that the certification process is intended to, again, close that gap of trust between what the enterprise wants to do and what we're delivering to them. So it tells them, here are the standards by which someone can provide their plugin, provide their containers. Here's the levels of validation we do on those containers and those plugins. And then we also identified the Docker store as the one place to get that stuff. So what we're trying to do is make sure that when you get this plugin or you get this container, you come through the Docker store and you're getting something that's valid. We're signing these containers and plugins as well, so you'll have the ability to verify that signature. Now over time, we also want to make that signature process portable, so you can host that internally inside your own Docker trusted registry and say, I have a container from Sysdig and it's certified, and I can see the signature from Sysdig and I can see the signature from Docker, and I can host it internally, and people can still deploy that and know that it's trusted.
You guys the authoritative source for all things certified?
We are, yes, yeah. So we're the Apple App Store of containers.
But is it like the Apple App Store? Is it more like Google Play? Is it like the Apple App Store, as in you guys do a lot more research, or is it more like Google Play where anybody can throw up anything? It comes from SAP, therefore I'm going to certify.
Yeah, I'd like to say we're closer to the App Store, but we're still early enough that I'd say we're somewhere in between. We're not throwing up everything. So I'd say previously we were providing official images, and official images were, hey, we know it came from that vendor, so it's an official image. That was more Google Play, I'd say. We've gotten closer to, with the certification process, more, I think, towards the App Store model, which is, we go in, we check to see, how does this container run? What APIs do they use? Is this valid stuff? Is it configured in a valid way? Is it using, volume mounts, et cetera? And with that, I think we're getting closer to the App Store model. We may not be quite as rigid, but I think we're getting close. But that's our intent as well. It's like we want to give enterprises the trust that they can look at this and say, yeah, this is something I would definitely use because it came from SAP and Docker certified that they're not using deprecated APIs in the container image. So the certification technology program actually has three components. One is the infrastructure that we certify, so anything we run Docker EE on. Containers, which are distributed applications and application components like databases or caches or what have you. And then plugins, which are today limited to networking and volume plugins that can extend the platform itself. So things like Cisco Contiv's plugin or Weaveworks. For the storage side, we've got, I think, NetApp, BlockBridge, folks like that, Portworx, et cetera. So this is, here's the full list, right? So here's all the guys you'd expect. There's some folks on here that I think, as we'll announce on Tuesday, will be hopefully some exciting additions to this list. Some of them, again, looking back at my 7.5 years at VMware, took us like 6 years to get some of these vendors on a kind of certified list for running in a VM. We're going to get them here on this list much, much faster, which is good news, I think, for all of us, because that's usually one of the hurdles for any enterprise to adopt something is like, hey, does Microsoft or Oracle or SAP, do these guys actually say you can run this and you'll be fully supported?
Any reason the EMC is not on the plugin list? I mean, they've been doing a ton of work.
Yeah, I know they've had their open source projects. I don't know, Justin, if maybe you know offhand if they are in process or if they were just late. Okay. Yeah, we can find out. I know we've been working with them. Yeah, we've definitely been working with them. They may not have made it for the first cut. They may be just coming soon after. But yeah, it's not. They've had their plugins for years now.
Right.
I think the important part on the plugins was not only having the plugin, but having the support model behind it, because that was the important part. Yes, 5 minutes. All right. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to build out the platform that provides kind of Docker everywhere, world domination. No, we actually want to focus on really just making sure that you have an end-to-end software supply chain. We're calling this thing the software supply chain as kind of your end-to-end CI/CD process built upon a set of standard capabilities. So containers as both your packaging and runtime format, providing that same substrate that allows you to be secure and portable everywhere, and then providing a set of standard interfaces to manage those applications now that they're in a stack or container format, that you can then ensure you deploy them the same way, you manage them the same way, you get logs out of them the same way. All the standard Docker API and interfaces are available.
You're calling it an app pipeline?
A software development pipeline.
Are you going the other way in the software development pipeline as well? I mean, I see packaging a container as certainly part of your software development process. There's a whole bunch of different components like testing and so on and so forth that aren't a part of the Docker platform today. Are you going that way as well?
We're not. We're not gonna go into kind of testing platform. What we want to provide is enough of that substrate that your testing platforms and automated testing or load testing or performance testing, like those things should still be your third parties and integrate into this. But what we want to do is provide the gates so that you can send it through that pipeline, make sure it's it's a common format, and then you can take it from there and do whatever you'd like with it. More testing, full-on performance testing, integration testing, et cetera. Cool. So the goal was to make sure that we had the Community Edition, the Enterprise Edition, laid out specifically for the communities that needed them. Make sure that that platform actually supports a diversity of applications, of developer types, of Linux and Windows operating system platforms. We'll be adding additional platforms to that mix as well. On premises in the cloud by virtue of the fact that you're using a container image, and then of course for not just your kind of next generation new microservices applications, but also your legacy applications that you can still get the benefits of containerizing for. So even though they might be 9 gig containers and they might be huge, you can now take that container and actually push it up to Azure and run it there. And that was a big difference between, I think, the VMware world and the container world, is now you've got an abstraction that you can actually make fully portable into a cloud environment or into an on-prem environment or across your on-prem environment as well. So that's something that we've been talking to a lot of these customers about, and has been driving a lot of the interest around MTA and programs like it. And so what does the Enterprise Edition mean for folks is, look to the Enterprise Edition for where you use Docker in your large enterprises and where you need a fully supported environment running your containers as a service. Use CE if you're an individual developer or an individual operator and you're ready to just do the glue yourself, right? So you want to use Docker in its native form. You want to just play with it. You want to build your own tooling around it. You want to use the orchestration, but you don't want to use our end-to-end deployment pipeline with our registry and our runtime management. You can still use the Community Edition for free. And then the certification program, supports the Enterprise Edition, so you have a place to get full-on support. And this is a quick view of kind of the different versions of Enterprise Edition that we'll offer to customers. So, what everyone heard from us last year was Docker Data Center, which was a product, and this is the product capabilities that we shipped. So we're basically shipping that as what we're calling EE Standard today. And so that's the subscription that a customer will buy. So going forward, customers will buy, if they want to buy the commercial offering, they'll buy either the basic offering, which is basically just Docker Engine and Docker Data Center, and then Docker Engine, Docker Data Center, and security scanning along with it. So those are the 3 options.
The security scanning, can you expand just a little bit on that? Is that just for images in the store, images that...
It's for images in your trusted registry that you can run on-prem. So the scanning is all on-prem. It's actually a capability that you deploy internally inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a managed service?
It's not a managed service, no. But it is the same service we run for Docker Cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's exactly that service, we just brought it on-prem. Okay. Yeah, and that's typical for what you'll see as we move forward in our CE and EE offerings. We'll offer CE capabilities with Docker Cloud, and then we'll start to bring those features on-prem with Docker EE.
Okay.
So that's turned out to be a really good methodology for us as we develop, because we can really get it honed and working in a cloud environment, fully multi-tenant, and then you can bring it on to an enterprise.
Okay, cool. How do I run Docker Data Center? I mean, do you have automation to kind of do my full build for me?
Yeah, so it's actually built as containers. So once you lay down Docker itself, once you lay down the engine, which you can automate as well, once you've laid that down, you can then deploy Docker Data Center as a set of containers on it, and it's fully automatable.
And as you look at public cloud providers, is that AWS and Azure offering fully compliant? The CloudFormation template, for example, that you have in AWS, is that fully compliant with the Docker Enterprise Edition capabilities?
Absolutely, yep. So we have an Enterprise Edition version of that template,
Yep.
and then we have a Community Edition version of that
It's
template.
fire up the template, boom, there's your infrastructure.
That's it.
You go to town.
Yeah, that's right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So ARM templates for Azure, CloudFormation templates for AWS. We have templates for Google Cloud coming soon. Who else do we have? Am I missing anybody? We'll have more cloud providers coming as time goes on.
Built yet for Photon?
For Photon, the operating system?
Yeah.
No.
Or Photon, even the hardware layer, at the hardware layer.
No, we haven't. Not yet.
You're actually
I know. This is we're talking to the VMware guys. Actually, there is a good session where we talk about data center and vCenter and how the two actually can interact in the same environment. We're working on plugins with them, so I think they're going to announce shortly their plugins for Docker as well. So they'll have their networking plugin for NSX and their volume plugins for vSAN as well. And so they'll have a session later this week on that. But we haven't done any joint work around Photon itself. I think that's about it. I think that's all I had. And 3 ways to get started. So I think we touched on this with MTA, but I think the goal here was we're trying to be more and more prescriptive as we go with enterprises and tell them here's the first thing you can start with containers, right? If you're not doing greenfield microservices, blow up your old apps and start new, then let's start with taking your existing apps, putting them in a container, getting the benefits of efficiency in your dev pipeline, as well as portability if you want to go to the cloud. And then we can talk about then slowly breaking up those apps into smaller microservices. But it doesn't obviate the need to figure out what that app is doing and what it's connected to and what its dependencies are.